for me. It's for God. I just go there. I just set my face. Can I do that every day? Probably not. But when I get the opportunity, I look at it and say, I can't discern. You know, we think, like Solomon, Song of Solomon, he had wisdom. We get to give him wisdom. They wake him up early in the morning. He comes out. All right, what's going on? What's going on? I got these two women that claim this baby is theirs. One of them rolled over and killed the baby. And he says, bring that sword over here, cut the baby in half. Give this half to this one and this half to the other. Then he's going back to bed. He said, I'm going to bed now. He goes on to it, and all of a sudden, one woman says, oh, give it to this one, give it to this one. And it was her baby, and he knew it. Immediately, he had wisdom after he made his natural state.
She's the mother.
She's the mother. And we think wisdom is something that I have this incredible gift of discernment. No, God, you know, we have to wait on
Above.
Well, it starts with Isaiah 11:3. This is speaking about the Messiah. So it's the kingdom age. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord, and he will not judge by what his eyes see, nor make a decision by what his ears hear. If that is the standard that God has, how would we be operating on anything less than that? So we have to be totally submitted to however the Spirit is leading, instead of us trying to make our determination on our own, especially without all the facts, without knowing everything that we should know about the circumstance and the situation.
I have to say though, that the only reason we're speaking like this is because we sat under 35 plus years of some unbelievable categorical word of God, because you can't, there's no way to pass what you have on except to continue teaching it. ABCs like that. People, you can't just preach and expect that people have what you've got. Mm-hmm. It has to, if there's going to be a passing of the torch, it has to be the same way it was passed to us. ABCs, learning, failure, learning, receiving, you know, I received maybe only 2% of what I heard today. I gotta come back for more. Whatever.
No, you need to come back for more.
Just keep coming back.
And not to be entertained, you know, or was that a good service? Yes, I was like stimulated or something. Sometimes it's in the mundane, routine communication that I hear truth, and the truth is what does then set me free, not the personality, not even not my intellect. So Jesus says in Matthew 7:1, judge not, because in the same measure that you judge another will come. That's an immutable, unchangeable principle in the universe. It's not respecting any persons. But then he says in John 7:25, judge according to righteous judgment. So I'd like for us to talk about what's the difference. And when people think that they're after justice, do they take the road of judging? And where do they end up with that? That they're judging versus what Jesus is saying, righteous judgment. And what does that look like? Righteous judgment.
Yeah.
really good.
Now, just to add a little bit to that, he also said this, I don't know if it's the same passage, but he says, I don't know if it was the same passage, but he said this. He says, how do you say to your brother, how do you take how do you see a mote in your brother's eye when you have a beam in your own?
Oh my goodness.
Okay? First, take the beam out of your own eye, and then you'll be able to see clearly the mote in your brother's eye. How does that happen? That happens from a person humbling themselves, coming to God without any righteousness of their own, receiving the righteousness of Christ, having his righteousness. That's what righteous judgment is. It's knowing that you have the righteousness of Christ on you. It is not your righteous judgment is not your righteousness. It's not your own. It's the righteousness that comes by faith. He said, then you'll be able to see clearly. Then you'll be able to see clearly. And there's a whole, and it makes all the difference. It makes all the difference. Then you run away. You run away. You flee from judging, like Pastor Olison was saying, from the sight of your eyes and the hearing of your ears, because your judgment, when you have Christ's righteousness, is wisdom, comes from wisdom that comes from above. Then you'll be able to deal with things clearly. Like I just finished work. It's finished work. It's finished work wisdom.
Why we can talk this way. Now let's back up and just be talking about the simplicity of saved versus the unsaved. Two categories of humanity. So, inasmuch as justice is to be served, let's put it in the context. Rachel is accused of killing, is not guilty under the law. Is not guilty under the law. To prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. But in the eye of public forum, public opinion, what we would call street justice, string them up. String them all up. In fact, they're coming across the border. See, I make this connection with people who are not even associated or connected to this individual. That is a judgment. The judgment could be, Black Lives Matter. Well, yeah, okay, but all lives matter. But I don't see it that way because I'm focused. Because there was a cause that, forced me in a way, pressured me to make a judgment and to come down on that side of judgment. Now, for Pastor Bill, pull up that verse again in Isaiah, because that's what Jesus Christ is quoting here. Actually,
Yeah.
he's
Yep, he will
because
delight.
the righteous judgment, and it says, "Judge not according to appearance."
And he will delight in the fear of the Lord, and he will not judge by what his eyes see, nor make a decision by what his ears hear. But with righteousness he will judge the poor, and decide with fairness for the afflicted of the earth. And he will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Isaiah 11:3 and 4. And the idea here is that we need insight from God to make final determination on any situation. That without it, we are operating in less than full information. Only God has, all the facts, and He knows He knows the end from the beginning. What is Isaiah 46:10?
Yes.
Here's a story. Here, I just want to read this. Albert Einstein once said this. He said, "Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. This comes from a genius who didn't talk until he was 4 or read until he was 7. Einstein's teachers labeled him slow and mentally handicapped. He may have been last in his class to do what the rest could, but certainly Einstein wasn't any less than his peers. He just had his own way of thinking, a way of thinking that would earn him the Nobel Prize and change the way we understand our world. So we are looking at things with limited ability to see what this is going to turn into. And as long as we are operating on less than full information, we must tread lightly, because it is so easy for us to jump to conclusions. I personally think that the whole movement of anti-Semitism is judging. We have made a determination. Some people have decided that because they were responsible for the Messiah being put to death in Israel, in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, that we now must continue to bring the wrath against them consistently. They don't deserve anything other than full judgment. But the fact is that Jesus made the statement from the cross. In John chapter 10, he said, I willingly give my life. He's not taking it from me. I am giving it up myself. So for us to hold the Jews accountable for that action it is totally wrong. It's judging, and as Matthew 7:1-2 says, you'll be judged. You'll be judged for that kind of judgment.
But this is interesting. We could be seduced into judging the judger. But I like what you were saying in terms of, the idea that I don't have full information. So who are the people that do have full information? Well, intellectually we don't, but spiritually we have access into this grace where we can receive wisdom from above, which is what you were talking about.
Well, God gave us courts too.
Sorry, courts?
God gave us the courts
Okay, be careful.
also to.
The civil law is different from
Right.
the spiritual
It
law.
sure is, yeah. So you gotta include both. So he gave us the
But they operate
courts.
on the same principle that,
It's flawed. It's a flawed system, but it's the best we have for a free and civil society. You have the court system.
Sure.
So when someone is accused or whatever of breaking civil laws, then they are called into court. There's a trial. There's a jury, so forth, whatever, and they're either found guilty or not guilty, and then there's punishments and so forth. And that's God. That's God. That's God giving us government. He gives us government, and it's only for free. It's so people can live free in this life.
Sure. But the rules of evidence, though, that operate here say, hey, you get to bring, the defense should not be restricted from bringing all evidence pertinent to the situation to the
Well, that's
court.
true. That's why I say it's flawed.
So it has to be, that has to be open, and
flawed.
obviously when it's not,
System can be
when
flawed.
you've got an agenda
Systems are so much flawed
as the people administering it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
There's flaws because of that, because of human nature.
Yep.
It's flawed. It's the best we have. It's the best we have, and then because ultimately, vengeance is mine, saith God. No one's gonna get away with anything.
So for you to say that, it means that you will look like you have no position in the matter. If they were to take a microphone and say, okay, John, what do you think about, this whole thing that's going down with Moore family? And we say, well, it's all in God's hands. I'm not the one to condemn this guy or to even justify what's happening with the family because I don't know all the information.
Well, I wouldn't say that though. If you're right with God, you'd say, well, let the courts have to. It has to go to court. It has to go to court.
It does.
Yeah.
But okay. Now,
If he gets
the
off,
ungodly, are simply those without God. It's not a moral position, it's not a behavioral position. So they have a closed system. We lived in that. I mean, it's still here. What you're saying as far as the legal system being corrupt and not, flawed. Well, that legal system is what a person without divine viewpoint, without godliness, God's mind about the matter, no perspective, an eternal, outcome, no white throne evaluation, no humanistic evaluation.
Like humanistic. It's humanistic.
So it is that, but it's what people will use to navigate, crime and punishment and good and evil and all those things.
That's what I mean by the flaws, though. That's what I mean by the flaws. But ultimately, if if a murderer gets off, right? If a murderer gets off in this life, it's only temporary. He still has to face God.
But see,
You got
now
to face
you're
God.
bringing in divine wisdom into a closed system. I'm just saying that
Yeah, which causes a reaction.
people judge, they do judge according to appearance because that is how that system works.
Yeah. But
By sight.
John 7:24, he will judge with righteous judgment. And this is what I wrote in relation to that. The damage done to anyone without knowing all the facts can be devastating. This environment becomes the devil's playground, where all kinds of accusations are possible. The destruction caused against anyone being unrighteously judged can ultimately destroy a person's life. And that's what we need to keep in mind whenever we venture out beyond ourselves and say somebody is guilty without knowing all the facts.
But see, people who are ungodly, who are intelligent, who are educated, who have culture, who have, the positions of responsibility and authority, will come to a conclusion according to that system, a godless conclusion. But we will then say there is another conclusion that includes God's verdict. God's verdict points to the cross. And this is, again, for believers, if we have a crossless Christianity, that meaning that, I'm religious. I'm a Christian, I'm religious. I'm doing the best I can. I'm living according to moral standards. But that can only go so far. Then you go into what we were saying is that I don't know everything. Okay, and I'm not being, pseudo-humility, or I just don't know everything. It is a fact. It is an absolute, just like gravity works, it is an absolute fact. So, how does a believer in this world judge according to righteous judgment? It's not just that, he has a couple of verses that he's going to think about, but he's got to be able to think all the way through. Otherwise, as a Christian, and like what you were saying, Pastor Bill, is I am as just as susceptible to judge by according to appearance as the because that system does come to a conclusion. May not. It's a crapshoot sometimes. The guilty person gets off free, and the free person is unrighteously condemned. That happens in that system.
Well, Pastor Jeff gave the good example of Solomon. Okay? He got wisdom from above. His judgment was righteous judgment.
Yeah.
He got a word. He got a word from God. And this was his judgment. Bring the sword
Spirit of the
here,
Lord was
cut it
upon
in
him.
half. That's what God gave us, wisdom from above. That was the great example. But then Paul said too, he said that there will come a time where people will have a form of godliness. They're the judging crowd. They have a form of godliness, but denying his power. And he said, and even now, he said, I tell you, even with tears, that they are enemies of the cross, in which you
Oh, my goodness.
And they let you out?
Hey, Pastor Ed, good morning.
I did, yeah. They just came last night.
Yeah, oh yeah? Did you say it was you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because
We're talking about you. That's the man. Are they staying by you?
I thought I had, that just came to me when we were talking over this. Hey. I thought I had was, they brought this coin to the Lord. They said, who must we pay homage?
That's really good.
And he brings the coin out. And he says, well, let me see the coin. Whose image is that? But she sees it. Give unto Caesar what's due to Caesar. Unto God what is unto God. That kind of goes along.
See if I care.
Yeah. So it's not just a coin, it's a whole picture of God's justice. It's beyond, even though we have a system of justice, but how can we, what we've already seen and heard with our eyes. So we're ready, we have a judgment already. Like you were saying, I thought of what, remember years, we went to hear the messages year after year. How many times you hear a message and say, oh, that was an awesome message. You leave, and an hour later, 2 hours later, you can't even remember what you heard. It's gone. No, it isn't.
No, it's not.
It's
there.
in you.
It's there, yeah.
It'll come out when it's,
Yeah.
so that's the wisdom of Solomon. Those things will come about. So, I remember Pastor speaking on beautiful situations.
Right.
God needs you to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. What a statement.
And like Pastor Wright was saying, how do you get there? How do you get to a place where you're judging righteously? Yes, answer, embrace the cross. Embrace the cross, because it's in the cross that you realize that it's only Him. It's only Him that knows everything. It's only God that knows everything.
So, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, like, we all could explain this, I think. We know what he's saying. What does it mean to embrace the cross? I could know the cross historically. Yeah, Calvary, 2,000 years ago. But I guess you're referencing the fact that I pick up my cross daily, which means death to self and alive before God, of whom I only have a grace standing. I don't have a standing based upon my own righteousness. See, so one of the things that I got to disconnect from is that if I think that I'm righteous enough, then I have a right to judge you in comparison. So that's what the publican and the Pharisee had legal grounds for saying what he said. He said, I'm not an extortioner. I haven't broken the law. And then let me tell you what I do. I contribute to my community. I'm a good citizen.
And I'm not like that guy.
Exactly. And he's the problem. That's where the judgment comes out, right? But according to that system, there would be people who would say, he's right. He's right. But Jesus turned it on his head. He said, hey, who went home justified?
You couldn't even look up.
Yeah, he couldn't. But that wasn't the
sinner.
key. The key was that he knew something about God. What did he say in his prayer? God be what?
Merciful. To me, what?
The sinner.
That's why I said earlier that there's just sinners.
Definite artist.
Right.
The sinner.
I like that.
Hebrews 5, listen to this. Hebrews 5:13 and 14. For everyone who partakes only of milk is not accustomed to the word of righteousness, for he is an infant. But solid food is for the mature. And here's what he defines that as. Who because of practice have their senses trained to discern good and evil. Diakrisis is the word, and it means to make a judgment or to discern. To discern good and evil. So it's basically what we're saying is the mature ones are the only ones who can discern good and evil. Because it is a spiritual discernment. It is something that comes from the Holy Spirit himself. So this is where it takes it out of the natural realm and brings it back into the spiritual realm where Solomon was operating when he made that determination. It was the spiritual realm where all of these determinations need to be made. And if we are only functioning on the natural realm, we have limited information and we have a limited ability to know the truth.
You know, somebody said this and it really provoked me. So, because we're talking about Solomon.
Yeah.
And where did he get his wisdom from? He got it from God. That was his prayer. So God give me, wisdom, to govern your people, to have a good civil
judge your people.
system, and so forth. But that wisdom didn't keep him. And this was brought out by a person, and I really, like I said, I got provoked and stirred up about it. Solomon did not have a prophetic voice in his cabinet. David did. David got called out by who?
Nathan.
The prophet, the voice of God. And that is the same for us.
And Samuel too. Samuel was a prophet too. Samuel anointed him.
Yeah. What I'm just saying is that without a higher authority than myself, I'll judge you according to myself.
Yeah.
But I don't realize that, except for the fact that the scriptures tell me, then I'm going to be judged according to other people's selves. So it'll be minus mercy. Minus mercy. Somebody said, we want to be fair. Things need to be fair. No, things don't need to be fair. They need to be just. But if I'm looking for fairness, I won't find it. It doesn't exist. Actually, fairness is the principle of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Retribution makes that to man. But mercy rejoices over judgment. It takes me to a place that I can't get there by my own, by appearance, evaluation, witnesses. I got 4 witnesses. You got 8 witnesses. Your case is stronger. The final analysis, bring the sword. You got two women here, and one of them's the mom and one of them's not, but both of them, are vying for this child. So, which side are you going to fall on? And what could have happened was that maybe those in the court at that time were looking at the outward appearance. This woman here just appears as if she's like mommy type, The other one was disheveled, just both of them were prostitutes or whatever their night, that previous night. So anyway, that's the dilemma of being in this world, but not of it. And we often think of worldliness as like, well, I don't smoke, I don't drink, and I don't go with the girls that do. And unbelievers can do that. But to have righteous judgment according to the scriptures which we have been given, so that we, and it's interesting about that portion in Hebrews 5, to be able to discern between good and evil. Unbelievers can do that within their system. But I would venture to say that that verse is saying to recognize when what's going on in the situation is limited to the realm of just good and just evil. And if it's good enough, we'll keep it. If it's evil enough, we're going to toss it out.
Well, he's talking there about divine good and divine evil, something that the natural man has no
Yeah,
concept
the
of.
natural man's blind,
Yeah.
but it says two times it says in the Proverbs, and I love this verse. It says 2 times in Proverbs, and it repeats itself in a couple of different chapters. But it says that there is a way that seems right to a man. There is a way that seems right. And that includes making judgments, wrong judgments.
There you go, talking about death again, aren't you?
It seems right. Don't you think? Yeah, don't you think? It seems right. But the end, it says the end thereof are the ways of death. It seems right. Because it seems right because they're going by this, what they see, what they hear. And what they're hearing is, they think they see something, but what they're hearing is lies. Is lies because Satan is the father of it. And the only way, as we sit here right now, we are like one thought away from being deceived. We're one thought away. But the only thing that keeps us is the whole armor. It's the whole armor, which is his
The mind of
precepts.
Christ, right?
The mind, the truth, the faith, the sword, the shield, the feet, the whole armor. Because we are not sufficient. In ourselves, we are not sufficient. So that's why there's a leaning. That's why there's a yielding. Not resisting. Don't resist. It says, don't resist. Don't grieve. Don't quench.
That's why
We are protected. We are kept by His power.
And don't lie to the
Safety.
Spirit either, right?
Don't what?
Don't lie to the Spirit either, right?
Don't lie. Yeah.
there's
Especially,
safety,
Yeah.
there's safety in the midst of many conflicts. There's, many, wherefore so great a cloud of witnesses go before us. It's amazing that, that's why we have a government and a church. There's safety. Like Pastor Love was telling me that they have an odd number so that they never come up with like a tie. I think that's really important. He says it's so good to have that, so that when something's coming up for discussion, because
And the other thing
we'll listen to our own selves.
Yeah, the other thing about the structure of the government that we are in is that there is a separate appeal board that has, that's not part of the eldership, and they have jurisdiction over decisions.
It's like
It's a safety thing. When we went through our trial, we came out wounded, but healthy.
yeah.
It's a paradox, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
Because we saw the frailty of our own, natural intuition. And what happens is that so good people, and everyone here knows of those who looked upon the ministry that raised them, kept them, loved them, ministered to them, and now I see it as an enemy. I mean, that happens, okay? And that's what you're saying is like, I'm a hairbreadth away. I could be that. What's going to keep me? I desperately need the Word of God. I think the thing that trips many precious people up is that by appearance, they're doing okay. By appearance, they're doing better than they did last year. That question, that political question, that it boils down to. Here's what you want to ask yourself. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And that's a black hole.
But we could say, yeah, we are much better off. I know Christ way more today than I did last year.
Yeah, but then that's again divine viewpoint. He didn't take that. But I'm just saying that we can.
There's two answers to that question.
If a man does not live by what he puts in his mouth, but what comes out of God's mouth.
Yeah, he was just Pastor Officer when we were here alone this morning. He was saying how progressively, because when you do embrace the cross and when you do walk humble with God, there's results. There's certain results to that. The results, in a nutshell, would be I'm decreasing, he's increasing. So yeah, I'd be doing a heck of a lot better than I was. Look at this guy here. He's increasing.
He just can't figure out where he's going to land. That's his problem.
We're all
Well, there's an airport wherever he's going.
we're all increasing. Do you have a word? Do you want to share something?
No, I just think also just this whole idea, of course, mercy. It's the idea of love, right? I mean, because love walks together with justice, but it also overrules to a certain point. And you talk about the Pharisee and the sinner, the tax collector, and obviously the Pharisee did not have love for the tax collector. If he had, then he wouldn't have gone to that place of judging him.
He had self-love.
Yeah, he had self-love. Yeah, and so
How did that work out for him?
so the love is something that where we do take up the cross. And so every time we love, make the choice or actually have an attitude of love, because the Bible makes it very clear that we are to love not only our brothers but all people. And so as we have just a very simple, it was interesting, I was in China once and there was this girl on the bus and she said, no, Christianity has so many rules. I said, no, they only have one rule, just to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that covers the rest, right? Because it fulfills all of the law. And so it's just by loving, then we won't judge others, and it's just a very simple rule to follow, or to allow the Holy Spirit to fill us with that love.
Yeah,
But it's loving God too is part of that equation.
Oh yes, definitely.
You just reminded me of how in Louisiana they want to bring back the Ten Commandments.
Yeah,
They want to put the Ten Commandments in
back in schools.
And
That's
the
great.
resistance to it is great. They don't want the Ten Commandments displayed. But we heard it defined as the Ten Commandments. We heard the Ten Commandments defined as 10 ways to love your neighbor. Because if you take each one by itself, you really see that is true. And there's never been any greater code written ever since Moses came out of the mountain.
That's different than 50 ways to leave your lover. Leave your lover.
10 ways to love.
Paul Simon, yeah.
So really, the Ten Commandments, if you look at them,
Well, he said, love.
the first five and the second five mirror one.
Love God, love neighbor.
So really, it's like, if you look at them, if you match them up and you ever do it, if you want to do an interesting study, match up 1 and 6, 2 and 7, 3 and 8. And you'll see that these is an objective and a subjective way to do one thing. So really it's 5 ways, which is grace. That's a really great study if you look at that. And you kind of see, like, yeah. And that's why the 2 stones, it's like really one is a
Reflection of the other.
reflection of the other, yeah. So Jesus stooping down and writing, we think that's likely what he wrote in the sand. So he wrote out the first, and then he wrote out the second. And then,
Come on, Sandy, get a chair.
Sit over here.
Get a chair. Come on over. Come on over. Yeah.
This is the mercy seat.
Oh, I need it.
Okay, we all do. That's why we're all sitting in the seat.
I thought you were supposed to be doing a boat race or something
Not
tonight.
today.
Oh, really?
I look like I'm ready for one though, huh?
How did that work
Oh,
out?
that's what Judy said.
Oh, it's worked out great.
Oh, good.
So there's really nothing wrong with the tent. It's just the bag that it comes in. Is that kind of like us? There's really nothing wrong with us. It's just that bag on the outside that's falling all apart and looking pretty ragged.
Got the treasure.
I told so it
Treasure and
actually worked out really good on Tony, but an 11-year-old girl was wanting to sell some her jewelry that she's been making anyway, and a mother, they live in that park. I'm trying to think what the name of that park is, but where it's all low income,
Oh, yeah, where we used to get. Okay.
Yeah, so she was just asking, can anybody donate a tent? Can anybody donate a cooler? And, was asking for, I didn't have the electric fan, but anyway. And I thought of tent since you had seen it that Sunday before, and you were asking me, and you said something about, and I saw you had a new one, so I offered her the tent anyway. So she was very happy, and also then I ended up giving her a ride, which was good because an Uber person wouldn't have put up with what I not had to put up with, but nobody was there. The people that were supposed to be there to kind of have stuff set up wasn't there, and so it was taking a while. Like, where are we dropping stuff off? And Uber would have said, "Here's your stuff, get out," or they wouldn't have hung around and helped put the tent up and help. Anyway,
What a witness.
we're not live, are we?
Of course. What a witness that.
Here's the speakers right here,
This
the
is
microphone.
thing, that's the microphone.
The microphone's right there.
This is the thing that.
So enunciate, enunciate.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Oh, now we gotta move that chair for Pastor Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so, well, we were, but I think we're starting. So,